The Ghost of Hallows Creek. The mist clung to the trees like cobwebs, heavy and damp, as the group of four trudged through the dense forest. Emily, the de facto leader of their urban exploration team, held up a hand to halt the others. "We're close," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crunch of dead leaves underfoot. She unfolded a yellowed map, its edges frayed with age, and traced a line with her finger. Just beyond the ridge, Ben, the group's self-proclaimed historian, adjusted his backpack and squinted at the map. Hallows Creek, abandoned in 1887 after the mine collapse. Over 50 miners trapped underground. Never recovered. And they say their spirits still linger, added Claire, her voice tinged with mockery as she pushed a strand of bright pink hair behind her ear. Classic ghost story fodder. Ghosts are not. The architecture alone will be worth the trip, said Marcus, the group's videographer. He adjusted the camera slung around his neck. If the town's still intact, this could be our biggest find yet. Emily's lips curled into a determined smile. Let's make history, then. The first sign of Hallows Creek was the rusted signpost, barely legible through decades of corrosion and creeping vines. "Welcome to Hallows Creek," it read, though time had robbed it of its warmth. Beneath the sign lay a cobblestone path, overgrown with moss and weeds, leading into the heart of the abandoned town. As they stepped into the clearing, the ruins emerged from the mist like a ghostly tableau. Sagging rooftops, shattered windows, and leaning wooden walls whispered of a town long forgotten. The remnants of a church spire pierced the fog, and the skeletal remains of a saloon loomed ominously to their left. Marcus raised his camera, the lens capturing the haunting beauty of the derelict settlement. "This place is perfect," he murmured, panning across the decaying structures. "It's like time just stopped." Ben knelt by a rusted rail that led to the collapsed mine entrance at the edge of town. He brushed away dirt to reveal a faded plaque, in memory of those who perished on March 3, 1887. "Creepy," Claire muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "I'll bet this is where the ghost stories started. Miners trapped underground, dying slow, agonizing deaths. No wonder people think this place is haunted." Ben frowned. It wasn't just the mine collapse. According to local legends, the survivors experienced strange occurrences, apparitions, unexplained deaths. By the end of that year, the entire town was deserted. "Brilliant," Claire said with a roll of her eyes. More fuel for the YouTube crowd. Emily ignored their banter, her focus on the church at the center of the town. "Let's split up and cover as much ground as we can. Marcus and I will check out the church. Ben, take the saloon. Claire, see what's left of the general store. Meet back here in an hour." The church doors groaned in protest as Emily and Marcus pushed them open, revealing a cavernous interior cloaked in shadows. Broken pews lay scattered across the floor, and the pulpit stood at a precarious angle, its wood warped with age. Streaks of light filtered through the shattered stained glass, casting fragmented patterns on the walls. "This place must have been beautiful once," Emily said, her voice reverent. Marcus didn't respond. He was focused on the carvings etched into the wooden pews. Strange symbols, crude and jagged, adorned nearly every surface. "What do you think these mean?" he asked, pointing his camera at the markings. Emily's brow furrowed. "They're not religious. At least, not in any traditional sense." A sudden creak echoed through the church, and both of them froze. Marcus swung his camera towards the source of the sound, but the lens captured only empty shadows. "Probably just the wind," Emily said, though her voice betrayed her unease. Meanwhile, Ben stood in the dimly lit saloon, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The bar was still intact, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Empty bottles lined the shelves, their labels faded beyond recognition. As he stepped further inside, his foot struck something solid. He looked down to find a weathered boot, its leather cracked and brittle. Bending down, he noticed the boot was still attached to a skeletal foot. Ben staggered back, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The skeleton lay sprawled across the floor, its bony fingers clutching a rusted pickaxe. Scratched into the wooden floorboards beside it was a single word: leave. A cold breeze swept through the saloon, carrying with it a faint, mournful whistle. Ben's breath caught in his throat as the whistle grew louder, accompanied by the sound of footsteps on the creaking floorboards. Claire's exploration of the general store was no less unsettling. The shelves, once stocked with goods, now held only remnants: shattered jars, rusted tins, and tattered cloth. She picked up a doll with a porcelain face, its features cracked and worn. As she turned it over in her hands, its glass eyes seemed to glint in the dim light. "Creepy little thing," she muttered, placing it back on the shelf. But as she turned to leave, she heard a soft giggle, high-pitched and childlike. She froze, her heart pounding. "Hello," she called, her voice wavering. The giggle came again, this time from behind her. She spun around, but the store was empty. The doll lay where she had left it, its cracked smile seeming wider than before. The group reconvened outside the mine entrance, their faces pale and tense. "There's something wrong with this place," Ben said, his voice shaky. He recounted his discovery in the saloon, and Claire added her own unsettling experience in the store. Emily's jaw tightened. "We're not leaving yet. Whatever's going on here, we need to document it." Marcus nodded, though his hands trembled as he adjusted his camera. The church had these symbols. Like someone was trying to ward off something. Ward off what? Claire demanded. Before anyone could answer, a low rumble reverberated through the ground, emanating from the direction of the mine. The group turned as one to see a faint light flickering within the dark maw of the entrance. "What the hell is that?" Ben whispered. "Only one way to find out," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. She grabbed a flashlight and led the way. The air inside the mine was cold and heavy, carrying the metallic tang of rust and decay. The walls were lined with rotting beams, and the floor was slick with moisture. The flickering light grew brighter as they ventured deeper, until they rounded a corner and came face to face with an impossible sight. A group of miners stood before them, their forms translucent and glowing with an eerie blue light. Their movements were slow and methodical, as if bound to an endless, mournful rhythm. Some swung phantom pickaxes at invisible rock walls, while others turned hollow, sorrowful gazes towards the intruders. Their faces, gaunt and etched with eternal anguish, seemed to shift in and out of focus, as if caught between dimensions. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. They moved in unison, swinging phantom pickaxes at invisible rock walls. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Are they real?" "They're trapped," Ben murmured. "Still working, even in death." One of the miners turned towards them, its hollow gaze locking onto Emily. It raised a skeletal hand and pointed, its voice a raspy whisper that echoed in their minds. "Leave this place, or join us." The ground beneath them began to shake, and the walls of the mine groaned ominously. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, and the ghostly figures advanced, their expressions shifting from sorrow to rage. "Run!" Emily screamed. The group fled, their footsteps echoing through the tunnels as the spectral miners gave chase. The mine seemed to twist and change around them, the passages narrowing and splitting into impossible labyrinths. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, they burst into the open air, collapsing onto the ground outside. The rumbling ceased, and the entrance to the mine was once again shrouded in darkness. The group didn't speak as they stumbled back through the forest, their faces pale and their bodies trembling. The haunting whispers of Hallows Creek followed them all the way to the edge of the woods. As they reached their car, Marcus glanced back at the mist-shrouded trees. We have to warn people. Tell them to stay away." Emily nodded, her eyes hollow. But will they listen? The question hung in the air as they drove away, leaving the cursed town behind. But as the mist closed in around Hallows Creek, the ghostly miners returned to their eternal labor, waiting for the next unfortunate souls to wander into their domain.